Hello, and welcome to the Stacking Dingers Show, your home for all things Underdog MLB. You can visit our Substack at stackingdingers.com, where you can see, uh, obviously, this show, our rankings, which we put out our top 100 last week, our combined rankings with the three of us, and all of our other written content and data analysis. Tonight we have me, Matthew, aka Sheep, aka Dark Sheep. You can check me out at D4RK SH33P underscore on X. And we have our first four-man show. So we do have the Stacking Dinger founder, Brendan Tuma, also the sports info associate at Underdog Fantasy. You can find him on Twitter, X at Too Much Tuma, and his non-underdog Substack is brendantuma.substack.com. Uh, our other data analysis founding member of Stacking Dinger, Chris, at B3ISBOL on X. And the super special guest this week, and our first guest of the Stacking Dinger show is Casey Bubba, someone you'll probably know for his prolific fantasy baseball podcasting career. He's out there on Benched with Bubba, which is like 600 plus episodes recorded, and more recently Bubba and the Bloom, which is uh, another great podcast if you're into other roto stuff, and just baseball in general. He's on Twitter X at bdentrick, and his Substack, which he has recently opened, is kcbubba.substack.com. How's that for my first attempt at a real intro to the show and not just firing off?
That's pretty darn good. You're a pro, season pro. 5 episodes in, you got this down. That's pretty
I had to write it all out.
No, I get it. I understand. Thanks for joining me, guys. I appreciate it. Or let me join you. So I guess the host in me is coming out right out the gate. But thanks for having me on. I'm looking forward to talking some underdog with you guys.
Yeah. So usually before we get in depth into you, we start off the show with what we've all been working on here at Stacking Dingers since the last show. I personally have been, as usual, just drafting a lot, so I don't have a ton to show. But Brendan, I know you put out something today that you wanted to talk about.
Hell yeah. So, first of all, yeah, Bubba, we're like so cool to have you. I met you at First Pitch Arizona this past fall, and Bubba is just like probably the realest person there. You could talk to him about anything. Like everyone else is having all these baseball, these quant conversations, and this pitch tracking and stuff plus, and Bubba's just like, what are we getting to eat right now? Like,
keep it simple. You want to go to the bar? Like, yeah,
100%. So no, this will be cool, and we'll get into really the meat of why we have you on here, why we wanted to have you on here in a sec. But yeah, I published a piece today. There's been so much talk about Tarik Skubal's Steamer ranking. I know so many of us are using Steamer, especially for our underdog draft. Probably until some other projection systems like the Bad X ATC come out is really like I'm using Steamer as like a foundation of a way to beat the market right now on underdog drafts. And Tarik Skubal's it's just so glowing. This was a guy who had a major home run problem when he first came up into the majors and was throwing his fastball way too much. And he's made all these, changes to his arsenal, and he was probably underappreciated how dominant he was last year. It's one of those things where he didn't make his season debut until the 4th of July. And then at that point, we know a lot of people check out and go into football and everything. So I just kind of dove into, where is Steamer getting this projection from? Is it legit? The biggest takeaway was that Steamer is really bullish on how many innings he's going to pitch this season. So they had him at 171. He's never thrown 150 as a professional. So if you like Tarik Skubal and you want to buy that Steamer projection, you just got to keep in mind how many innings they have him for right now.
Yeah, and right now he's going at about pick 70 on Underdog, around some pretty good pitchers around that same area. So, and you might want to take a look when you're making that decision of how many innings you already have. Maybe if you took a SP1 already.
He's more affordable on Underdog than he is like at the NFBC, and that's kind of like some of the intersection we want to have with you tonight, Bub. And like something that I've been thinking about, and I know like this might be some work that Chris is doing this offseason, is like there's part of me that Skubal and Underdog, like I can't trust him to be this workhorse all season long the way I can for, let's just say, like an Aaron Nola or a Logan Webb type thing. It doesn't mean Skubal can't do it. It just means we haven't seen it yet before. And so does that mean that, I don't want him on Underdog because it's best ball? I don't have in-season waivers. I don't want to use that roster spot. Or is it a situation where Skubal's weekly ceiling is so high if he gets, a 2-start week, especially like the points that he could put up are just so impactful that he actually does make sense. I lean more towards the latter just because of his price seems like pretty affordable right now on Underdog specifically.
Yeah, looking forward to seeing how Chris breaks that down because I'm leaning your direction on that for sure, and we'll obviously dig into that as the show goes on. But the Skubal thing was very interesting when you tweeted out something, even like just not even just the usage, like the usage of the different pitches changed tremendously over the last 2 seasons.
Skubal's a great test case too because he's kind of falling in the range right now that we identified last year and kind of even the year before as like a primo sweet spot for where you want to start hammering some pitchers. And like in and around his area, like the 70s, you got Fried, Peralta, him, Luzardo, Gilbert, like that whole kind of crew. And then onwards is where a lot of I'm picking up on my second pitcher, sometimes first pitcher, and just kind of like attacking that 70 to 150-ish range. And that is kind of what I found when I was looking at some of the positional stuff that we can talk about in a little bit. But the weekly thing is super interesting because he plays in a great park and like he's going to face a lot of shitty teams at different points. So we're going to get to see like, what is 1 week where he gets 2 starts. Like he could be a top 5 asset if you get him in the right week and in the right context. So I think he's a fun one to look at from that lens as well, besides just the kind of crazy at first glance Steamer season long projection.
Definitely.
I did see that was the one comment on your article on Substack there, Brendan, was that he didn't face any good teams last year. That was what somebody was saying.
It's actually kind of true. Like when you look at his box score, like I did chuckle to myself just because like I spent like multiple days writing this and I was getting so granular. I was on like Brooks Baseball with like the vertical movement of his changeup specifically, and then it was just like, yeah, but he only faced good teams, so whatever. I'm like, why didn't I just do that? Is my analysis.
Yeah, analysis. It's that simple, guys.
and not really to make fun of that person because it was kind of true. He did have a lot of AL Central matchups that benefited him.
But
he'll get those.
No, that's part of it with Skubal. It's like you're buying, you're obviously buying the park and you're buying like the division and again, like kind of that like weekly that upside that he could have. Like he could match, Strider on, his best weeks. Like that's how highly I think of Skubal on a per start basis. But yeah, why we're here is, to kind of blend that sort of I found it interesting even. It got my brain thinking about, his price at the NFBC versus Underdog. And, Bubba, you're obviously drafting on over at the NFBC a lot. I don't know if that's something that you see, like giant price discrepancies between the two platforms.
Oh yeah, definitely. That's one thing. And I remember and we talked about that last year as Chris was mentioning kind of the sweet spot. There was a bunch of pitchers then. There's the same thing now, especially in the pitching world. Like we see it other positions, but like Skubal's just too rich for my blood in an NFBC right now. Just a lot of it is the innings thing. And like I'm a safer drafter than others and whatnot. So I kind of look at it that way. But then you see the kind of quote unquote, you might think discount on Underdog, and at least it brings him to the forefront. Where like on NFBC, I pretty much don't even put him like in a queue. I just kind of move on. Where in Underdog, depending on how I'm building my team and whatnot, it's interesting. Like he mentioned, Chris mentioned Luzardo. That's a dude I'm huge on, but so it makes it tough there. But maybe if you double tag, but Skubal much more in play in Underdog for me at least.
Yeah. And then Chris, I know you've been working on some stuff that is not yet quite ready to publish, and so you want to talk about what you're working on and people can look forward to upcoming in X amount of days. I'll not commit you to anything.
Thank you for leaving that open-ended. But yeah, so the last batch of things were all kind of positional related stuff. And I did it a little more generic. It was kind of like first 5 picks, last 5 picks. How many, if you take, 5 pitchers in the first 5 rounds, how well did you do? Spoiler alert, really bad. You lost a lot of money. So that kind of stuff, which is good to kind of get a sense of how the beginning and the end of drafts went last year. Not any guarantee that it's going to be the same dynamic this year in terms of where people are going. But I find that the pitcher discussion is often the most interesting one. And last year, I have a chart somewhere, but it's basically throughout the window of draft season, pitcher prices just got pushed up like all the way to the top. And we saw that even with the expensive guys, like those guys in the first couple of rounds got pushed up as well. And I think my gut is telling me this year that after kind of that experience last year where those guys at the top did not do well, I feel like people are going to be a little softer at the top, which is kind of what we're seeing with only Strider, only Cole, only Burns, only Gosman kind of floating in the first 2-3 rounds. And then I think the next whole tier is just going to get compressed upwards. I think you're going to see the guys that are in the 60s right now push up into the 50s, maybe into the 40s, but it's going to be the like 120s to 100 to 90 kind of tier. I feel like those guys are going to get continually pushed up because there's kind of a clear tier at pitcher at that like 120 overall and Underdog, or 130, 140, somewhere in that range. There is a spot where you stop having this like nice floor of innings just because of the way MLB teams work. And after that point, you're kind of screwed if you don't have like 4 or 5 quality options, in my opinion. So I feel like people are going to push to raise their floors with these pitchers, and then it's going to make that whole middle tier kind of compress together and push upwards against some of these hitters that just project better in real life.
That's something that I've been really thinking about, and I want to write a piece on it, is the idea of like there's been so much talk about like in fantasy baseball analysis, I've seen like the glob and like what so many people have taken as like the main takeaway from the glob is, okay, don't take, this SP6 overall too high because he's so similar to like SP15. And I agree with that, but I haven't seen people push it far enough then and to suggest make sure you get as many glob pitchers as you can, because what comes after the glob is the scariest part of it. And I haven't seen that side of the equation just yet. So I agree with you. Like I believe in the glob. It's a thing, but I still want as many glob pitchers as I can get personally.
I do kind of have a theory that some of the repression of that group of pitchers is the people that are drafting right now on Underdog in this bullpen contest, or is probably a lot of the enfranchised players, the people that played previously, and that once a little more public people, and we're sort of in the new year and people are starting to come back to baseball, I think they're going to see some of these names of pitchers, and that they're not going to have lost last year based on taking early round pitching, and that they might click them a little bit more often.
For sure.
All right. So, Bubba, we have you on here. I believe you started, when did you start playing on Underdog? I think I saw you playing a little bit last year.
Well, I don't know if it's allowed to be said, but I played on that other site that was like Underdog at one point. Yeah. I played there a lot. Like I was one of I used to use a promo code on my podcast for draft and everything, and I played it a ton. Loved it. Obviously, those that know, Underdog's very similar to that, and I've been playing it a little bit here and there. I didn't get really like aggressively into it until probably the last couple years per se, but I would dabble. I'd play more in like the daily tournaments than the season long, which obviously it's in baseball. It's also developed more and more in recent years for the season long product. So I've been getting into it. I looked before the show. I've only done 4 drafts so far, which is actually really disappointing to me. But that'll change. It's basically when I have a free evening, I'm like, I'll watch TV and throw a draft on my phone and please fill it type thing. But I love it. I think it's a great format. Obviously, you guys talked all about that stuff, but it's a great twist from the roto stuff that we do to a different format. And it just kind of gives you a different, like we talk about playing fantasy, it's supposed to be fun. And when you play Underdog, you get like almost a different player pool on your team. So it's kind of fun I get to root for these guys now. Guys I've kind of always wanted, like to the Skubal comment, where I would never have him in a roto format probably this year, but I could have a couple shares in Underdog. So it's cool. Like we're in, and different, roster constructions, all kinds of stuff. So couple of years ago, probably started getting heavier into it, and I'm going to try to. I don't max out. I'm not one of those guys. I'm not going to go throw 100,000 tournaments out there. I don't have 12 on slow draft right now, type guy. But I will have quite a few by the end of the season.
I think what's like something that I feel, very like, I'm between like my two families where like I've had this background in, more of like traditional fantasy baseball. And then, I've been an Underdog for a couple of years and I've just, come to fully believe in the product and everything. And I see, like, I know that there's people who play an Underdog, the Underdog baseball games who will never do or never have done, season long managed fantasy baseball league, but they understand like the draft structure from all their football and basketball and golf contests. And then there's also people who, something that's been a big goal of mine has been, trying to introduce this other platform and game to people who, I think are some of the smartest fantasy baseball minds out there who are, playing a lot of the NFBC and playing roto and season long manage and all that stuff. So for me, it's always like really interesting to see that blend come together and see both perspectives of it. I think we like I think it's cool that, but you're someone who got this big following that's a little bit more, roto based, and playing at the NFBC, but it's been really cool for a lot of people at Underdog to see you playing on there as well.
Yeah, no problem. And it's a good product. That's why I support it. I'll just, throw out cliche lines, but it's like a combination. I play a ton of roto and I play a lot of DFS. So this like it almost interweaves like perfectly into it. Like the daily aspects of it, the prop bets that Underdog brings to the table, all these different aspects. It's really, really cool. And so it's one of those where I wouldn't be shocked someday if like I eventually get burned out and I can't do a ton of roto. Like I just do way more. Then I might start maxing out some Underdogs. I might just say I'm not going to use my roto budget, but throw it over here. We're gonna do that, so I don't have to worry because that's the in season part. That's the grind. That's the 6 months of just fab and all that stuff. Where you guys are grinding drafts right now in Underdog, but then you guys get to chill. Unless you want like the daily tournaments or whatever. But for like your heavy baseball, you're chilling after opening day for the most part. Well, until you degenerates get into your halfway mark tournaments and the other ones. But that's the beauty. I say degenerates friendly because I am one. So it's like it's really fun that you guys continue to develop more and more ways to play the game. That's the joy of it all to me.
Yeah, that's something that Brendan talks about often, that like even like sports cards collecting, there's so many ways you can enjoy and make small bets across different ways and enhance your viewing experience of baseball.
Yep.
I know I myself came from more of the DFS and now I'm branching out more into roto a little bit in the last few years. So it's definitely I'm the opposite of you and coming from the roto into Underdog and DFS. Well, I guess you said you were the combination, but I'm sort of making the other path.
Definitely.
Just to distribute and get, like you said, get different players and just have different ways to think about baseball. Because the more ways you expand and think about it, the more the other things are going to get better as you try and do it.
It opened your eyes to like different players, different strategies, totally different. Even though the scoring is different in Underdog, obviously, than a normal roto category league, it just allows for so many different aspects of play. And like you said, Brendan's talked to me about it, other people, that the like different contests he's trying to like maybe get down the road someday and stuff. That's the beauty of it, because if you stay stagnant, especially in a sport like baseball, you're just going to disappear. So the fact you continue to change the game, and quote unquote, which you are doing, that definitely keeps more eyes on it, gets more eyes on it, and keeps it appealing. Because in the end, I think most of us, not all of us, obviously, like I know we've talked about like football, that some of them are just computer people that just punch numbers in and they insert a million lineups. But a lot of people that play, especially roto side of it, we're just diehard baseball fans. So if you can just create ways for us to like have a little skin in the game, it's awesome.
I do think, Chris, you were there were some shots fired at your slow draft.
I respect it. That was the thing, because like I haven't gotten there yet, but I know for a fact someday that will be me. Maybe in another month, who knows? But I respect the heck out of that. Can I ask you a question, Chris? Sorry. How do you like the 8-hour slow drafts? I have not been able to do that yet, because 4-hour slow drafts on NFBC almost make me want to pull whatever hair I have left out. How do you do an 8-hour draft? Like, how does that flow go?
So Brendan actually he nailed the whole thing in one sentence a week or two ago, which was if you do one of them, it'll be like peeling every like inch of skin off your body slowly, and then getting run over by a truck. But if you do many of them at a time or stagger them, so you always have something on the go, it doesn't feel like you're drafting one team in like these 8-hour increments. It's like you have all of these teams, and there's always something, either you're on the clock or you're about to be on the clock. So it's a terrible experience if you're trying to do just singular teams one at a time. It can take like a month to get one of these things done. But if you're doing, 5, 10, 15, 20, whatever, and you're like, this is my kind of draft bucket of things that I'm going to be doing from now until the end of the month, that actually is totally good for me. I didn't have the patience to do roto, and I tried it a couple times, and I did not like the whole season long. You got to be on the ball. You got to be so sharp to basically keep your hand on the steering wheel all season long. And so I'm like, okay, what's a nice fast-paced alternative? Let me do these nice underdog fast drafts. It's like 30 seconds, boom, boom, boom. Draft's done in like 45 minutes. Laws change. I can't do that anymore. So now I've gone back to like the slow grind of this kind of patient process. But the only way I'm able to get through it, is kind of doing it in bulk. And then I'm doing like 15 first-round picks. And I'm like, okay, I got 10 Jordans. Well, that's a lot. So maybe in the next 5, I'm like, all right, I probably shouldn't do that. And then it's like, how many times have I paired him with, X and Y? And you can kind of like waterfall your way down the board in a way. But as I was telling you guys beforehand, I'm unfortunately stuck now in like the hell range of like around 16 to 18. And I'm just picking off like these random outfielders and random infielders. And like every once in a while I get a pitcher. But it's like I'm just looking at the same names over and over again. And that part definitely gets tough if you're not like constantly cycling it. So it's its own kind of pain in a way. But there's a reward at the end, hopefully. So, yeah.
It makes sense. It makes a lot of sense actually having multiple at one time. That makes a ton of sense.
Yeah, and the way that I usually draft is there's usually like I have 2 or 3 slows going on, but then if I'm feeling like I want to draft, I'll fire up a fast. So it's never like I'm always sitting there waiting for my pick on the slows, because I have the ability to just go do a fast draft whenever, since this is my main outlet for drafting. I can just go in and jump in whenever I want to. So I'm never really thinking about the 8-hour clock. In fact, I probably sometimes use it because I get that notification that I'm doing something and I set it down. Like,
that makes sense.
All right. So, Bubba, when you first came to the UD format, because on draft, I actually don't know if they had the season long baseball. I did daily draft.
That I'm aware of. They did.
Okay.
I just did daily too.
Yeah. So when you first came across UD, like what was your first initial impression of the format, and like did you compare? Some people compared, oh well, it's like a points roto league, etc. So was there like a initial inflection point that you had when you first came?
Well, first I drafted like everybody else. Like, this is cool. It's quick. It's easy. Then I hit up Tuma on Twitter. I said, "Can you come on my show and explain to me how to play this game?" and then no, that was part of it. But I enjoyed it because again, I kind of like the OBP aspect to it. I'm a big fan of OBP. Like I play in Tout Wars, it's all OBP, so it's totally different than anything in FBC. So I like using that because it opens up another tons of players in the player pool. Like a lot of players become relevant, and then it maybe pushes down some of the top players a little bit because of that relevancy. So it's all strategy based there. And then the pitching side of it, that's the real fun part. Like quality starts got value now. Like just guys that can grind innings are like Lance Lynn stunk last year, but he still puts up production. Like to wrap your head around that, the average player would just call you an idiot. And there's no chance. But you guys know exactly what I'm talking about. Like Lance Lynn, Giolito, they're very bad pitchers in reality last year. They still struck out a ton of players, and they still threw a ton of innings. They might not have been great, but they're still serviceable. And the other aspect being the best ball, depending on how many pitchers you take and everything, you're only using 3 a week, so you don't have to take all their bad starts. That's the beauty of it.
That's the other thing about Lance Lynn.
Exactly. So you can totally play these angles. Like the old days would have been, I'll take, Herman Marquez, but that's just a lost cause in Colorado now. But you could have taken Marquez for his road starts, those kind of things, where it's a really cool concept drafting wise, where it opens up so many avenues to build. And in the end, as Chris has done with his research, there really aren't that many avenues probably, because it basically tells you need to be in this realm. But when you're in the draft room, I guess you have hope when you're looking at certain things compared to when you're in a DC like you are right now, Matthew. As you get another like 10 rounds from now, you're gonna be looking at that player pool going, why did I sign up for this draft? That's where I'm at right now. 'Cause I just got done with one, and like rounds 45 through 50, it's just like, what dart do I want to throw right now? And in Underdog, you don't have it as much. Like Chris is in the world of trouble right now, but it's not nearly the same feeling, which is nice.
Yeah, I feel like late round for me, sometimes I just get bored with the same late round pick, so I will still take like one dart on Underdog. Maybe a Dylan Carlson here and there. I just took my first share of him the other day.
Well, you never know. The Cardinals do Cardinal things. You never know what could happen there.
My favorite, I have a buddy of mine who plays Underdog all the time and is just always like sharing me his teams and drafts and how they're doing and everything. And like sometimes he'll ask like why I don't like a certain player, and then he'll like make like just what the bull case is on that player. And instead of then just playing devil's advocate, like I'll say, if you can, one of the things I like about best ball and diversifying that player pool, like you were talking about, Bubba, like other guys become relevant, is like you could tell me, oh, I'm just drafting this guy to get unique, and I will buy it 100% of the time, because if you do get to the finals and Underdog and you have someone that other people don't have, like that is more valuable than having a good player who everyone has. So I all you have to Dylan Carlson, I was trying to get a little unique. I'll be like, that's a great pick.
Well, that's like the DFS mindset. Is it's do I want to just cash, or do I want to win the whole thing? And to win the whole thing is you don't have to be like, we've learned now as people gotten smarter with DFS. Matt, you can attest. You don't have to be unique in every position, but you need to be unique probably in a couple for sure. Like you just have to, even like PGA golf last weekend, like 3 guys over 40%. You still needed a couple like 6%ers in there, but you could eat the chalks. My point. So it's just one of those deals. So like in the Underdog aspect, you can take your stacked, normal, consistent big boy team, but like the Carlsons and other, like I have way too many Cleveland Guardians I keep looking at. I have Guardian stacks. It doesn't make me feel warm and fuzzy, but the way I've been drafting, that's where it's at. And if they somehow have a magical year, which I'm not crossing my fingers, that'll be unique, I'm pretty sure.
This is something that gets talked about all the time within Underdog football world, and it's about advancing players who are weren't that rostered by the time you get to the playoffs. And that conversation, I haven't seen it, fully creep into the baseball side of things yet. But like the best example, and I still got to go back and Chris, maybe this is something we can do eventually, but like Julio Rodriguez last year was a first round pick who didn't heat up until late, but the arc of his scoring meant that not many teams had him in the Underdog playoffs. But if you did get a Julio team through, that's when he went nuclear. So he was just like a hammer. He was so valuable to have in the beginning part of the playoffs. And I think that's something that we're still trying to really nail down what's proper structure and what's the proper way to allocate your draft capital. But I think once that comes, we're going to want to start thinking about diversifying our portfolios, and then ways to optimize late season scoring and different builds and all that sort of stuff. So I think I know, Bubba, you said like we got it down over here, but like it is extremely early. Like we actually, like, it's not even that we don't have it down, it's just like it's so early that we're Chris says it well, always trying to be directionally accurate. But yeah, I don't know, that's what I like about the Underdog game right now, is there's a lot of ways to think about it and go about attacking it. And then at the end of the day, it's just like, just pick the players who are going to score the most points at the same time. So it's like, why are we banging our heads against the wall?
Well, that's kind of like, that's why I love, like you gave the presentation in Arizona. Chris, I've talked to behind the scenes, but he's always tweeting out awesome like graphs and charts, and you guys all work together. And that's what I mean by having it figured out. Cause like I watch you guys like behind the scenes and stuff, and it's cool to see like this mixture works, Obviously, there's no player's name there, though. That's what makes it common. And you can't figure that out. Like for football, where guys are already on draft day going, well, this is the preferential schedule for the playoffs, blah, blah, blah. Baseball's so stinking long. And there's so many injuries. If you try to tell me that this schedule is beneficial in baseball and you're going to get to the playoffs, you're insane. So my short way of saying all that was that's what you just said, Brendan, is what I just do at the end. I just take the guys I think are going to play the best, and I'm just going to roll and hope my guys get there. Like the Guardians stacks was not intentional. I'll start in a draft going, should I try a stack? And then I start going down a wavelength somewhere else. And the Guardians are just those guys like last year, the Brewers that are in the mid rounds, they're all still sitting there. So you can kind of do it, especially in the infield position. If you wait, you can get your Naylors, your Jimenez's, a bunch of them. They're all just sitting there. And then you take one, you're like, well, I might as well stack them. That's maybe my dumb brain doing it. But that's where that comes from, where, smarter people are like, let's stack the Rangers and let's stack them. And that's where I have issues with it, like personally trying to do it. But like I said, it was supposed to be a short version of it. In the end, I just pick the players I think that are perform the best, and hope it gets to the end type thing. I had a couple runners last year, but not enough to obviously win it all because I still work.
Well, it's curious. I'm curious to hear like Matt's view on this, is because I would say if there is an edge with some of the people who now there's some people drafting Underdog baseball early in the offseason who just really have an understanding of projections and how that plays into things and how you got to download them and use them and all that sort of stuff. But then there's also people who I was talking about, like who are on the Underdog app, just like drafting multiple sports, might not have the in-depth baseball knowledge. So if there might be an edge for people coming over from Roto, I do think picking the right players is a more viable strategy on Underdog just based on the ADP we have than it is like at the NFBC.
Yeah, so you do say that a lot, that Roto players kind of have an advantage, and I think that's true if they can accept the format for the game that it is. I think that is one benefit that people that on Underdog, even that are more football minded, perhaps, like they understand the game a little bit more than people coming from outside. So I think while they can get people coming over can have better player analysis, the fundamental structures and stuff are initially a hurdle to get over.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think a lot of it's there's picking good players, but then there's the roster construction and game theory part of it, and that's where I think that's where the real rubber meets the road type thing is when it comes to the Roto versus Underdog. Is yeah, I could walk into give me any format and I'll at least think I'm picking good players, but when your roster's all said and done is like this the proper way. Again, going back to what Chris does and everything, where I get really like, and I always joke I'm like a caveman brain. Like that's why I don't make stats. I love people that do it for me that are smarter than me. Like why waste my time? So when Chris like comes out with okay, if you went like 3 outfielders and 2 pitchers or all these different charts that make sure that's where the game theory part comes into it, and then it's getting that game theory and then going back into the player pool. So it's just it's like not 3D chess, but it's one of those type of things, which is really interesting. That's why I said I love what you guys are doing here, because you guys are doing the hard work that football's done for so long, and now you guys are starting to bring it to baseball, because that's the other part is I think the Underdog product, for those that don't have the patience for 6 months, which I 100% get, this is a great way to get people back into baseball, which as a baseball fan where we all began here, it's depleting. We need more people on the game. So if Underdog can do that, awesome. Let's roll.
Yeah, I would say that like the roster construction piece is more about raising your floor and kind of building a solid foundation, not just for the one team that you're drafting today, but building like a foundation for your whole portfolio of teams that you're going to draft over the length of the tournament. If you can make each of those teams a little bit less likely to be bad, not even just more good, but less likely to be bad, I think that kind of is where like the roster construction piece fits, is like what's our floor, what's our foundation, kind of what are the ground rules that we're operating within, what are our guardrails like, and then the micro player analysis, who is actually going to be better at baseball than everybody else this year, that kind of player take analysis part, that's your ceiling. Like that's where you're going to get your, I know that X is going to be better than Y this year. We're going overweight, we're going underweight, and that's where we're going to like really take the top off of the tournament. I feel like that's kind of where you mesh those two worlds, and it's one of the fun pieces of kind of the underdog puzzle to solve. I think that's appealing to both people that have played other formats and people that have played other sports on Underdog.
It's funny. We use the example all the time of 2022. There was nothing that was really pointing drafters to, early round infielders necessarily. And Paul Goldschmidt wasn't going super early that year, but he was like where he was going. There was no macro take to think, okay, this is where you got to get an infielder right now, and that way you'll just walk backwards into some Paul Goldschmidt if you're drafting enough. But that's the year he won MVP and everything. And it's if you had just identify. Sometimes I'm like so scared to take an infielder in a certain round, even if I love the player. And that's something that I'm trying to like not do as much of. For instance, like we were talking about Royce Lewis a few weeks ago about like everyone loves Royce Lewis, but like his price, and he's an infielder. But if you don't take enough of him and he smashes, then that's gonna hurt your portfolio on Underdog.
Yeah, that's my conundrum. Is I hate the outfielders late like everybody else. So sitting there, like I've passed by on so many that infielders I know are very good, and that maybe goes to maybe I need to draft more so I can diversify in that realm, because that is 100% my problem. Like in recent ones, like the last one I just did, I've been going outfield pitching early, and the last one I did, it seemed almost at least 2/3 of the teams like filled up their infield before they even tacked outfield and pitching. It was like a whole new strategy on me. I'm like, I have not seen this before. What devil worship are we doing in here? Because
no, that's good for you. Let them.
Well, it was. I loved it. Like I really liked my team in the end. It'll probably make my worst team of the entire year because I liked it that much. Because I think we all can agree there's so many infielders as the draft goes on. But to your point though, what if one of them's the MVP out of nowhere in the front and you just totally like handicapped yourself? That's the part that the negative thoughts in your head as you're drafting. Like, what did I do wrong? Because they're all doing this.
Yeah,
I think one of the reactions to the outfielder conundrum from people that are maybe not used to the format is that they think the format should change. So I don't know, Bubba, do you after doing like 4 this year and some last year, do you feel like and you can say be nice or whatever, but do you think that it's a detriment to the game maybe that
this isn't like an
used?
Underdog show or anything.
Yeah,
like you can.
we're not
I'm being
sponsored by
serious.
Underdog.
I'll bury Underdog
You
later.
can
Don't
be
you worry.
honest.
I'm just kidding. No, I really don't, because my theory I've had in any, like I said, touts the tout war format I'm in, it's OBP, it's innings pitched, it's not wins or calls. There's so many different things. You sign up for a league, you know the rules. That's what you're playing. That's my philosophy on it. That's what the Underdog. That's how it's always been since it came out. Like learn to live it and go. And I think it's fun. Like it gets a whole new way to draft. And it's not like you're drafting 15 team leagues. Like, so there's 30 starting outfielders potentially, maybe 20 or 6 or 90. Do the math the hard way, Bubba. 90 starting outfielders, but maybe it's 60 because guys are platooning or whatever. So that's what makes it kind of difficult. But at the same time, that makes your draft strategy different too. Do you want to go and take 3 guys and then go get 3 platoon guys and hope that they just happen to hit the right time? Because maybe you go get extra infielders, use them as your utility, and don't focus the outfielder on utility. Things along those lines. It's just more strategy. So I'm totally cool with it. I guess if you had to pick anything to nitpick on it, like maybe some of the like util guys that are like DH guys that got put in the outfield could probably maybe better for the infield. I mean, vice versa type thing. That would be about it. But otherwise, like I'm not going to complain about that part at all.
Not a lot of draftable catchers though.
There is a great one though. You had to team me up on that. I don't even know if I should say his name. Is it worth saying William Contreras on this show because he's a goat? But no, not a lot of draftable catchers. It is heartbreaking if there was ever going to be a format change. Like you could do the old like tight ends get 1.5 point value, make catchers get like
premium leagues.
Yeah, catcher premium league. So now all of a sudden, at least so it's like they're in the realm of conversation. Like QBs get 6 passes, like 6 point touchdowns. Tight ends get 1.5 PPR points. Now maybe the catcher gets a boost or so. I don't know. I have no idea how to do it properly, but that would be funny because that would. But maybe make it outfield catcher position combo, so then your outfield pool's deeper. There you go. Because you don't need more infielders. That's for sure.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, as the resident Brewers fan, I will co-sign the William Contreras.
He's the GOAT.
He's just I don't he hasn't even like I know you mentioned him on your show when Tuma was on there, and I know quite a few people, but some people are worried about catchers after getting maybe a little bit burnt last year on some other catchers. And
The thing about William is it's like accepted, and rightfully so. Like Adley Rushman is a super
Yes.
like best since Buster Posey superstar catcher. And so he's rightfully like always number one in rankings, but people treat it like it's Adley and then it's a big drop. And it's like, to me, like any projection system that I look at and just putting the points together and the playing time. That's the thing about William. He plays all the time, which is similar to Adley, which is one of Adley's superpowers. And to me, like they're way closer. And because of that, I just have across, whether it's Underdog or my dynasty leagues or just other road, like season-long leagues of drafts, like I've ended up with so much William. So I'm a big fan, and I think his like the strides he made defensively too, with like the whole Brewers catching lab thing. Like I think that's so cool. So he's a beast. If I was the Brewers, I would try to sign him like long term, like right away.
100%. I'm on board with everything you guys said. Like fully on board with that. I have one share in my 4 leagues of William, by the way, just so you know. I stayed on the bandwagon, so we're good there.
Chris, do you have any other catcher targets while we're talking about catchers that you're on, or
he's got important data to scrap, not catchers.
I have an unhealthy obsession with Gabby Moreno. So that's problematic. I keep getting to the end of these drafts with other Diamondbacks and being like, oh, who can I take in round 19 and 20? Let me click Moreno again. Partially because I'm a depressed Jays fan who wishes that he was still on the team. So I'm coping through my drafts. But other than that, one catchery thing that I'm curious to look at is that catchers are one of the more like schedule and routine oriented positions where you're not going to go a full week of playing every day behind the plate. So the best ones, like the ones we've talked about, Adley, Contreras, whatnot, they're going to get, their 4 or 5 starts behind the plate, maybe a DH mixed in, but like they're less likely than other infielders in that range to actually get you the full like 6 or 7 days worth of at-bats. Can they still make it worth it? Absolutely. But I would say that if there was some kind of like a way we could look at on a weekly basis, because weekly is the scoring period that we're looking at. Weekly is like it's gonna be my theme for the next like couple months in terms of looking at stuff. It's like I want to figure out what we can do to think weekly instead of season long or daily, because I don't think we really have that lens yet.
That's really cool to think about it that way, though.
That's going to change a lot with pitching, I think, with how we think about pitching once we advance that conversation and figure out how to get some data to look at it. I'm curious to pick all your brains on this. I think you were tagged in the tweet, Chris, as well, but like someone was asking on Twitter the other day about like Jack Sawinski and how he's, someone he thinks he's got a lot of upside, so he likes him late on Underdog. And I'm like, I see it like Jack Sawinski. You get to that range of outfield, you start looking for reasons to draft someone. Like Jack Sawinski is very interesting. The reason that I'm just like not like all in is the playing time on a weekly basis, because I play in so many like daily lineup leagues where when you have a Jock Peterson or Sawinski or someone, Edward Julian, someone who mashes righties, but you pick and choose when you use them, like they're so valuable. And I just know that I just feel like I have a very strong understanding of how those plate appearances get broken up on a weekly basis. And now if Sawinski does have a 5-homer week, obviously he's going to crack your lineup. But I just like it, the path for him versus like a Steven Kwan, who is never going to be as loud in the stats he's putting up as Sawinski, but it's just going to play so much every single week. I mean, obviously Kwan's going way earlier, but just that idea of like Sawinski types or volatile, either players who are volatile due to like strikeout rate things or playing time, though those sometimes go hand in hand. I'm just curious what you guys have been approaching that.
Well, I have Quan on all 4 of my teams, so I like that quite a bit.
I'm in on Quan for the first time this year.
Yeah,
just the playing time,
especially in this format. Like he's an OBPG. Like if he just improves a few little things that you've probably looked at that were maybe quote unquote.
Oh, your Guardian stacks. That's what you had.
Yeah, that's why he goes right into it, man. I'm telling you, he's my outfielder to go with my Naylor and my Jimenez. It's a glorious thing if it ever works out. But I see what you're seeing, because like in Roto, I like Sawinski. At least I can do the biweekly moves like and use that. Where in the weekly setup, like I'm really curious how Chris looks at it, because when I'm drafting hitters, I can kind of in my brain go, okay, this guy's platoon, this guy's not. I kind of can expect this and that. You at least have an idea when you're drafting them. Where the pitcher part, like Tuma mentioned, is that's a crapshoot because he might only pitch 1 day a week, and that week could be horrific. So how do you actually like put that on paper type thing? So I'm curious to hear what you guys think about that as well.
So Quan is 100% like a blind spot on my part. When we put our we had our rankings together last week, and one of the three of us didn't have them in their top 100, and it's just because I don't find myself looking for outfielders as much in his range. I'm usually ahead of the game on outfielders, so I'm already like 3 or 4 outfielders deep by the time we get to like the Quan zone.
Look at this
So,
guy.
Yeah,
Fancy.
so
The Quan zone.
the Quan zone. That's where I'm taking all of those kind of like mid-round pitcher types. But to go back to the like Quan versus Sawinski bit and kind of like archetypes of players, like the
Archetypes,
Quan
that's a good
type
word.
is he's producing for you every day. Like he's a very like steady, like single walk, stolen base. Like he's projecting every day for like a solid contribution. Quan is somebody that I would like to target on a team where maybe I've gone pitcher early or I've scooped some infield value that was like too good to pass up. And if I'm trying to make up ground at outfield in that like where is he now? He's like in the late 70s, early 80s range. If I'm like one outfielder at that point and like I can pencil in Quan as like my outfielder too, like that feels great. Sawinski is more the type where he's going at 150-ish. If I have 5 already or 6 already, and I don't need like Sawinski in there every week, what I need Sawinski's like 5 homer week in July when he goes nuts for a week. That's like the team that I want to fit Sawinski onto. So it's a kind of a cop-out answer, but my answer would be you can do both, but just different teams, different scenarios.
Makes a ton of sense.
That's a great
And
answer.
I think maybe this doesn't make a ton of sense as someone who takes Christian Yelich a lot, but I think the further you go down in the ADP, the less you need, or the more you want to target those guys that can score the big weeks. I think last year a great example is Luis Arias, who had just an unbelievable hitting season through singles and just all of his average, and that we didn't really see him be a guy that you needed. He was like, I don't know, maybe Chris has this information at some point, but like how many weeks was he actually scoring on your team for his like small contributions throughout the whole week?
That's like the next level of wave of data analysis we need.
Yeah. How good
I'm
gonna look up
that's on the to-do list because that's the good stuff. Like that would be really cool. Because my guess is he slots in as like the outfielder 2 or 3 on a bunch of weeks, but he's not like winning you weeks by himself. Like that's kind of the like range that I would put. The Arias like range is very small. Like he's kind of this window that he's going to hit every week, whereas the like whoever Sawinski is the guy where it's like, okay, Sawinski might have been the outfielder 1 on your team for like 3 weeks and he never played otherwise. Like those guys are 2 different types. And I think that's a great way to like contrast what you're getting from where in the draft. And the weekly stuff, I think is like, yeah, that's exactly the type of stuff that I want to try and figure out and see where we can like get niche with it. And I think that's one of the other things that we haven't really talked about with the kind of moving your roto skill over to this format is the thinking weekly and the thinking bi-weekly, like Bubba mentioned before. In the like, if you have a roto background and you're playing on an FBC, you're doing the like twice a week, setting the lineup, you're up on platoons, who's like gonna get 3-4 starts. Like you're kind of thinking about that as the scoring period, whereas other people who maybe are coming from football on Underdog or from other things into this, you're looking at, all right, what's the season-long projection from Steamer that spits out? Like, all right, that's like this. So I think that's kind of one understated edge that you can have by listening to Roto podcasts, consuming like Roto materials, besides just the like player takey stuff, which is very valuable. The analysis is great. They have there's a lens that is like bi-weekly and weekly that you can kind of get secondhand, I guess would be one of the ways to put it, just to kind of shift your thinking a little bit from like, his projection is 1,200 points for the year. What does that mean for your team, like week 1, week 2, week 3, and then more importantly, like week 22, 23, 24 in the playoffs? Like, what is this player actually doing for you in those weeks?
I did that at the whole outfield conundrum is something that I was most paying attention to like early in the offseason for Underdog. I mean, I did that table that showed like their season long projection, and it was like color coded like red to green, good or bad, and then it was like a season long projection like per plate appearance, and you kind of get a feel for like who those upside guys are. Like Jaron Duran, he has a pretty good projection for where he's being drafted on a per plate appearance. So for whatever reason you think he's just that good, or he's gonna play against lefties, or like whatever it is, like he's someone who you can see make a jump like that and everything. So Sawinski would obviously fit that. Christopher Morel is another. These guys have warts, of course, but like there's a reason to take them is they do project well. Just for whatever reason, Steamer, didn't give as much playing time.
And that's another good thing about Underdog right there is like Sawinski, he could have his spike weeks just by hitting home runs, where the home runs are nice in Roto, but he probably drags you down on other categories throughout the season. You just want the points in Underdog. You don't care how he gets to them. That's why Stephen Kwan's like very boring in a Roto format, much more appealing because of his floor, but like just accumulating points in Underdog makes it much more appealing. So again, more to the strategy of the difference between the Rotos and the Underdog makes it quite interesting, and goes back to the weekly thing, which I'm 100% curious about now. Like that's really interesting to me.
You also don't have to predict when Sawinski's 5-homer week is happening. You just get it in your lineup.
Bingo. Yep. Make him like your 6th or 7th outfielder that you're like, okay, just play 3 or 4 weeks this whole season. That's all I care about. Just, or in case of emergency, break glass. But otherwise, yeah, we're good.
Yeah, because we see on the winning teams, like especially pitcher, like last 2 years, the winning team has had a pitcher that basically didn't pitch the whole season. So like there, you can get by. So even on a couple of weeks of like important contributions from players, that a quick name that came to mind as you were talking there, Bubba, was Brandon Nimmo, who is going really relatively very high on Underdog. I was doing my first DC for this year, and I was very surprised where he was going. And I don't know, I'm interested to get your take on him in the 2 formats, and like if you think he's the sort of player that is valuable where he's going that high.
Much more valuable in Underdog to me personally. His OBP skills are off the charts, and the last 2 years he's played a lot, but it's been a concern of me when it comes to Brandon Nimmo is just being on the field, which has been an issue for him. And now you have the Mets adding outfielders to the mix there with Harrison Bader, which they're saying Bader's going to play a lot of center field and Nimmo will play a corner outfield spot. See how that goes going in that route. But for Underdog, just the OBP skills, leading off, the accumulations he can do, I like a lot. And if for some reason playing time happens to decrease or he gets hurt or something, you're not in as much of a hole as you are like in a DC, which you're drafting right now. So I'd be much more willing to take that chance in an Underdog and compared to a Roto format. That's definitely one of those guys that is a big difference between the two for me.
The thing about Underdog that I would, really suggest to some people coming over from Roto is like so much about the NFBC is like you got to build, the way that I personally like to play is you got to, build that base where you're not going to get screwed in the early rounds. So like some people just don't have the stomach, it's whatever, it's $1,000 draft. You just don't have the stomach to take Tyler Glass now at the 2-3 turn or whatever it is. So like you're going to take, you're going to build around Aaron Nola and Logan Webb and those other, kind of, and then you're going to get your upside late. The thing about Underdog is these are $5 drafts, or sorry, the bullpen's $5 and then the main tournament's $10 and had $100,000 prize, where it's like that doesn't mean just be reckless in every single pick, because roster construction still matters. And but something that I would, recommend is a little bit of a mental barrier to get over for maybe people who are coming over is like it's again, I don't want to frame it as just like live a little type thing, but it's like, but you do need to like picture this team, like how does this team win $100,000, and you got to pick the right spots to get that upside from.
And Glasnow is definitely one of those kind of guys that could do that 100%. It's a good example because the injuries or slash innings in a career type thing makes him very, very scary for the, comfortable base people, like you said. So that's a great example because I know I'm guilty of that in certain formats, but in Underdog, I'll take my chances. If I'm going to pitch early, I love a guy like Glasnow. Like you said, like even if he pitches half the season, like he could give you elite numbers in half a season, or hopefully one of the other pitchers you have left over can fill in. That's kind of a nice way to be.
All right, so we are reaching our hour here, but I have prepared a fun little game for us all, or you three, to play. We like to do a little bit something different at the end of the show for those who stick around. So we're gonna introduce a little trivia this week. So you guys are gonna work together. I have one warm up question and then one tougher question. This is all based on stats from last year. So the warm up question is, so you'll have, I'll give you one strike on this first question to get the answer right. So you guys can work together. So the question is, among qualified hitters, who had the highest BABIP of the 2023 season? So for some of the people that might be listening, BABIP is batting average on balls in play, which is sort of oftentimes used as an indicator of luck on how your actual balls in play like played out. Like if you're above average for the league, you tended to be thought of as getting lucky. If you're below average for the league, you're sometimes said to be getting unlucky. So we got the highest BABIP of last year.
Do either of you know if Nolan Jones qualified for plate appearances? So I know he had like a 400 or something.
That's a good one.
If that's true, he did not qualify. I'll give you that.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
I'll be nice here. I'm not trying to stump you. We're having fun.
Yeah. I mean, Arias comes to mind just because his average was
That's
so
the one that
high.
came to my mind too.
If this was like the question, I'd be like maybe not, but maybe since it's the warm up, he was giving us a layup.
Yeah, but I don't know.
No, there's just more answers on the second question.
Arias is the one that came to mind for he arose
Same.
in my top of my
Sure, we'll
brain,
guess
so,
Arias.
Yeah.
He arose. Very good. Very good. So Luis Arias with a 362 had the third highest BABIP. So that is your first strike. So you have one more chance.
I'm horrible.
I don't think it's this high. Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Bubba.
I said I'm horrible with BABIP type stuff. Tim Anderson used to be your go-to, but he couldn't hit anything last year, so it didn't matter.
There was some questions at First Pitch Arizona like similar like this, and I was like too nervous. And I was gonna be right, and I should have done it because like I had these answers in my head, and like everyone was guessing for like 5-10 minutes. I should have done it. But I think Jaren Duran had a high BABIP, but I don't think it was this high. I feel like I spent more time on like the low BABIP leaderboard.
The ones that were quote unquote unlucky. Yes.
Yeah, I was trying to reasons to like, Max Muncy's gonna start hitting for a higher batting average soon, right?
Watch it be like Acuna or something. Just hit everything.
I will give you number 2 as one more hint. I guess it's not really a hint, but elimination with a 367. Yandy Diaz is number 2.
Ooh.
Oh, that's a good one. I just looked it up. Nolan Jones had a 401 BABIP.
Good Lord.
Wow.
So above Yandy Diaz, who was high in the batting average?
It was Arias, Yandy. It's not Acuna, right?
Not Acuna. It is a first round pick this year.
Corey Seager?
Freddie Freeman.
Freeman.
There you go.
With a 370.
Wild.
So we'll call that we'll give you a half a point in this game that we're not actually really scoring. But all right. So now the tough one. There were 7 players to have a WOBA of 400 or higher. And so for some of the people that might not be as tuned into baseball that are some of our regular listeners, WOBA is the weighted on base average, which is sort of a preferred way by many people to look at a player's contribution to the team and how their hits and how their contributions are weighted compared to other people. So we have 7 players that had a 400 or higher WOBA last year. I will give you 3 strikes on this one.
Well, Acuna, right, has to be above 400. Yeah, no.
Has to be.
Yeah.
Has to be. Yes.
Matt Olson.
Well, I'll give you Ronald Acuna, and the fun fact, just because there's a very fun fact of these players, he is the only one to have an expected WOBA that was higher than his
crazy.
actual
What a
WOBA, which
freak.
was number 2 at 428.
Is Matt Olson also qualified here? Do you agree with that one or no?
Oh, for sure.
Yeah.
Matt Olson is number 5 at 413.
Yeah, Mookie Betts, no, yeah, maybe.
Shohei had to be up there too. I feel like Mookie was
100%. Good call, Shohei.
Shohei was number 1, 433. So he was even
Ridiculous.
better than Acuna.
What about J-Rod? I'm thinking like potential MVPs.
Um,
J-Rod, Mookie, Freddie.
We said Freddie, right?
No, we haven't said him yet for this one, no.
It was like the 2. I'm thinking of the story. It was like the 2 Braves, the 2 Dodgers, and Ohtani.
Yep. That's what I was thinking. So you had Mookie and Freddie.
So I want it to be Jordan, but I know because I looked him up last week when I was just going down the how high can I rank Jordan rabbit hole. It wasn't 400, so I'm going to throw that out there as I'm pretty sure he's one that we can cross off the list.
That's insane.
He's probably high. I think he's like usually a little higher on like the ex-WOBA. And we're all just weird. It's like similar to how Strider. It's like you start looking at Strider's advanced stats, and you got to take a cold shower afterwards, and then you got to come back and look at his actual stats. But okay, so we have 5.
Are you going with the 2 Dodgers?
Yeah,
Yeah, I think you have to. Mookie and
2
Freddie.
Dodgers, the 2
Mookie
Braves.
was 4 at 416, and Freddie was 6 at 411.
So what numbers are we missing?
So you are missing number 3 and number 7.
It's not like Aaron Judge. Did he
qualify? Did he play enough? He missed so much time.
Is that an answer?
Yeah, that's
how many strikes do we? Yeah, give Aaron.
Yeah, that's your first strike. It is not Aaron Judge.
I was wondering. What about Corey Seager? Because
that's the one. That's the name that I was going to say next.
Yeah, Corey Seager.
Number 3, Corey Seager with 419. So you have 2 strikes to get number 7, who is by far maybe the hardest. Well,
yeah, obviously the hardest one.
The hardest one. So
I'm just going through teams in my head now as we. Is it Bellinger? No, did Bellinger get?
Do you think it's also Yandy? That's way too.
That would be crazy. It could be. I'm not saying it's crazy in a bag, but that would be interesting.
For the brand, we might just have to guess Yandy.
We get 2 strikes. Go for it.
You got it. It is Yandy.
The only reason I guess that is
402.
When you go to like WRC plus leaders, which like I look at all the time, like he is like crazy high. But yeah, no, those are good questions. Those are fun.
You guys did it very good. Your prize is a quiet round of applause. Congratulations.
That was fun.
All right. So as we wrap up here, thank you, Bubba, for joining us tonight. If you want to, list again everywhere people can find you, because I may have deleted that thing that I wrote down earlier.
I'll keep it simple. You can find me on Twitter, X at BDentric. My podcast, Bench with Bubba and Bubba in the Bloom. That's the main stuff. I got a Substack, but just follow me on Twitter. You'll get all the goodies there. And thanks for having me, guys. This was a lot of fun. Just spitballing some baseball, talking some Underdog. Like really, really fun to be here.
All right. So thank you everybody for watching this. And we will be back again next episode. So for Brendan, Chris, and Bubba and myself, enjoy your drafts.